All right. Hi, everyone. It's Patricia Harold, president of the Nebraska Firearm Owners Association, Nebraska's voice on Second Amendment issues, followed by almost 30,000 Nebraskans who strongly believe in the rights and freedoms protected by the Second Amendment. We've invited candidates running for Congress, governor, legislator, city councils, and county sheriff to participate in our online town hall series, Meet the Candidates. Our format is online and recorded and unedited. Our members have prepared questions to assess candidates running for elected office, and I'd like to introduce George Merithew, who is running for Douglas County Sheriff. Thank you for joining us, George.
Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. We're going to go ahead and get started. So our first question is, why did you agree to participate in this online town hall with us?
Well, first and foremost, because I believe in the Second Amendment. It's the primary amendment that guarantees all other rights. Without the Second Amendment, we don't have the First Amendment. We don't have the Second Amendment. We don't have the Third or Fourth or any of the other Bill of Rights. Some of the later amendments, not quite as much, but definitely the first 10 Bill of Rights are guaranteed, and that guarantee is backed by the Second Amendment. So I'm a huge proponent of the Second Amendment, have been my entire life. I stand with the Nebraska Firearms Owners Association in their support of the Second Amendment and their efforts to ease restrictions and limits on people who want to exercise their Second Amendment rights. As been said by Senator Brewer, and I've said it before, we don't require reporters to get a permit every 5 years, and we don't require them to take a test to exercise their First Amendment rights. Why are we doing that for the Second Amendment? It's not a right given to us by our founding fathers. It's not a right given to us by anyone else. It's a right guaranteed by God, and that's the right of self-defense. What tools you use to do that, that all depends on what's available at the time. And we have firearms, and those are a legitimate tool that needs to be used for the right of self-defense and the right to protect yourself against government overreach.
Wonderful. So the next question is kind of a fun one. What is your favorite firearm, and how often do you shoot it?
I struggle with that one because I don't really have a favorite firearm. I have a lot of firearms that I really like. I have a Ruger, or it's not a Ruger. What is that? It's a Raging Judge. Shoots the 454 Castle and the 3-inch slugs, and I love that gun, but I don't want to shoot it a lot.
No, yep.
That's a big boomer. But
it is.
I just bought a. What's that?
It's a boomstick.
It is, and I just bought a Ruger 5.7, and I'm enjoying that. Just finally got it sighted in. Great shooting gun. I really enjoy it, but the ammunition is so expensive right now that it's I haven't got to shoot it quite as much as I want to.
No, I know.
I really enjoy the gun. I'm looking at probably buying one of the P90s, PS90s, so I can do that. But other handguns that I really, really like shooting, I love my duty weapon from when I was at OPD. It's a Glock 21C, 45 caliber with dual porting on the front end. Love that gun because it's so quick on the second shot. It's just easy to control. It's a lot easier to shoot than the 40 cal Glock I had when I went through the academy. Just love that gun. Another huge one that I really like, and it's one of the oldest guns I've had, is a Ruger Mark II. The bull barrel on it, stainless steel, pain in the butt to take apart, but holy cow, is that gun accurate. I was shooting that with a 5.7, and I was getting fairly at about 15 yards. I was getting decent groupings with the 5.7. Then I pulled out that Mark II, and good Lord, I was putting everything in a quarter. Love that gun.
Totally different shooting experience.
It is. And that's a gun that I use to teach people how to shoot. Matter of fact, the day I did that, you'll see on my website that I taught a young lady to shoot. She went out to shoot with her boyfriend or her friend, and he had a 9mm, and she was scared to death of it. So I pulled her over to the side and said, "Shoot this. Let me show you how to shoot this." And by the time she was done, she was comfortable with it, and she was hitting targets. She was hitting.
Don't you love that smile when they
learn? It's just awesome.
Wonderful.
As far as the gun that I really shoot the most, I belong to Inter 10 gun range, so I get over there about once a month, just to stay accurate. It's hard to it was great when I lived back in Chapman because, you know, we could walk out in the backyard and shoot.
Mhm.
You can't do that no more.
No, no,
Where would you want
unfortunately,
to?
we're growing
So,
too
you know,
fast and everyone's taking up all the space.
exactly. But, you know, I'm LEOSA certified, so I carry, so I have to maintain my annual qualification with the state. So I shoot my 45 here and there, but a lot of times I'll shoot my carry pistol, which is a 9mm,
Mhm.
also a Glock. And then, you know, I love my AR variants. I've owned an AR since 1990. I bought it during the Clinton gun ban, so you can imagine how much I overpaid for it.
Yeah, you sure did. We have one in our collection from that era. And
But I
yeah.
got lucky. I got an H bar with a match grade barrel on it. And when the Omaha Police Department went to their patrol sniper program, I was able to use that rifle, which had the fixed top on it. We put
Mhm.
a different upper on it, used the same barrel, and mounted a really nice Leopold scope on it. And so it's a tack driver. I haven't got the scope sighted very well, but I've got the because I haven't had any distance to shoot it at. But
Mhm.
I got it so at 50 yards, I can with iron sights, I can put them all in the 10 ring. So
Oh, that's
that's pretty
great.
interesting.
Wonderful. All
But
right. So we're,
yeah, I mean that's you know, rifles. I really love those. But I'm big on military rifles. I've got a M1 carbine. I've got an M1 Garand, and I used to have a World War One Winchester, and good car. I rarely sell guns. I think in my entire life I've sold 3 guns, and 2 of them were the first 2 I bought with my brother, and we just decided we wanted something different. And the other one was this rifle.
mhm.
And I sold it to the guy I bought it from. Well, actually, it is one of his best friends because it was his grandfather's gun. He wasn't into guns and didn't really like it. Well, 20 years later, he was kind of sad that he'd sold all his granddad's guns, and I was the only one he could find that still had it, that his friend could find that
Oh,
still had
that's
it.
nice. That's
Yeah,
nice.
and I just, you know, it's good karma. I love the gun and took my first
Mhm.
deer rifle with it. It was sporterized, and or took my first deer with it. It was sporterized, and I really love the gun, but it's karma. You gotta get
No,
it back. A gun
yeah,
belongs to the family.
it
So
did. It
yeah. So
did.
that's kind of what I shoot.
Awesome. So next question. What is your opinion? What is the number one purpose of government?
To protect its citizens. Now, it does that through a collective protection, collective defense with the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and protective protection of our borders with Customs and Border Control and Homeland Defense. But it also has to protect the rights of its citizens. It's got to prevent overreach and ensuring that citizens' rights are not infringed. Protection includes ensuring individuals and minorities' rights to prevent a tyranny of the masses. We're not a true democracy, nor would we really want to live in a true democracy.
Mhm. True.
We're a representative type government, and the whole point of that is we're a democracy representative government with full protection for minority rights and for person's individual rights. So I may not like what somebody wants to say, but you know, as law enforcement officers and as an officer in the United States Army, I'll protect your right to say it to the day I die.
Mhm.
You have to be able to have that free exchange of thoughts and ideas, and you have to make sure that the government protects those rights. Um, so yeah, the number one purpose of government is to protect its citizens, but that's a pretty broad statement. So
Mhm. No, good clarity on that. Um, so our members, we represent Nebraskans from all over Nebraska, but obviously the population of Nebraska is sort of tilted on the eastern side of the state. We have a large membership base
sure.
here in Douglas and Sarpy County being where I am. So one of the questions they had is, as sheriff, right? So in this role, what are your thoughts on what are you able to do to protect Nebraskans from, federal government overreach that might restrict the Second Amendment?
Well, the sheriff is kind of a unique position in law enforcement in that their number one accountability is to the people because they're an elected official. So it's their job to protect their voter base, for lack of a better term, and
They're
the
right. They're
citizens to make sure.
constituents who are their voters.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So your job is to make sure that that's being protected. Now, as far as what I would do as sheriff, I'm already pretty outspoken as a Second Amendment supporter, and I would continue to do that. I'd be the first one in line to go down and testify at the unicameral, which I've done before,
Mhm.
in support of the Second Amendment. So I would be vocal on that. Having been an outspoken supporter of the Second Amendment, I've been a member of the NRA since I was 17 years old, currently a benefactor life member. I follow national and local gun issues. As an attorney, I've looked at some of the gun trusts and things like that to transfer firearms to your heirs. I will ensure that the federal government does not overreach in Douglas County. Primarily, I'm going to do that by refusing to enforce politically motivated restrictions. The Supreme Court's already said the federal government cannot order a local official or a local law enforcement
Mhm.
to do their bidding.
Right,
So
right.
we don't really have to do anything. But if they're telling us to do something like that, then I can make it public and say this is what the federal government's recommending, and we're not going to be doing that.
Right.
So if it's politically motivated, I'm not going to enforce that. New laws and federal policies restricting the Second Amendment have to be challenged in court. Now, the beauty of that is, as the sheriff, I believe I have standing to do that.
Mhm.
So I would seek any judicial intervention, stays, court actions to overturn unconstitutional infringements on the Second Amendment. So I'd work with the county attorney and we'd see if the county wants to support it. And if they don't, I'd start looking at private groups and myself, and we'd start looking at court action to prevent that implementation of those types of overreach.
Wonderful. The next question I have is sort of a series covering different specific issues that our members have been concerned about. So I'll mention a topic or issue and then ask, what would you do in support of a position that you hold on that topic? So if you're pro Second Amendment, how have you supported it or what you would do to support it? So the first one is, the concept of constitutional carry. So you had talked about Senator Brewer's bill. What have you done or what will you do in support of the position you have on constitutional carry?
Well, I got vocal on social media when Senator Brewer's bill passed the first reading, and then I was very vocal on social media when it didn't pass the final reading and couldn't get the cloture vote. I support constitutional carry, plain and simple. I don't believe there should be exceptions to the right for any city in Nebraska. It's called constitutional carry, not your constitutional rights stop at a city limit. That's just it's just the antithesis to that.
Right, I get it.
I've called out my opponent on the Republican side for not supporting constitutional carry. He's clarified his position that he does support constitutional carry, but only if he can prevent people with certain misdemeanor convictions from carrying guns. No, plain and simple. That's just a misinterpretation of the Second Amendment. We do restrict felons from carrying guns, people who have been convicted of serious crimes. Those serious crimes are determined by our legislature, and misdemeanors should not prevent you from carrying a concealed firearm. We only have one misdemeanor right now in the books that prevents you from having a firearm, and that's domestic violence convictions.
Right.
Now, that can be a lot of different misdemeanors. It can be misdemeanor destruction of property, but if it was done in a domestic violence setting, that can prevent you from having it. So it's not the misdemeanor law, it's the fact that you committed it while committing domestic violence.
Which is such a horrible issue that we're facing.
Domestic violence has proven over the years and through all studies that it escalates, and it escalates. And preventing someone from having a firearm in a shown situation that's going to escalate, that kind of makes sense. I don't particularly agree with it all because it seems to be almost a lifetime ban, and there needs to be steps to be able to rehabilitate because you're not always going to be in that domestic violence relationship. So I want to see that made fair, but I don't want to add more misdemeanors. I especially don't want to add something as Aaron Hansen has pointed, if you punch somebody in the nose, you shouldn't be allowed to have a gun. Okay, I'd like to ask Aaron how many times he's punched people in the nose. I know he's done it. I've reviewed the reports, but the bottom line is Aaron was justified in that. That's part of our job as law enforcement officers. But it doesn't matter. There's also, if you're 19 and you got into a bar fight, should you be prevented from having a gun for the rest of your life?
Yeah, we don't
And
often make good decisions when we're young.
no, no one does. The brain doesn't even mature until it's 25.
Yeah.
So, I've called out Aaron several times on his gun registration position that he supports gun registration in Omaha. To me, gun registration is the antithesis of the Second Amendment. You can't support gun registration and claim to be a supporter of the Second Amendment. So on constitutional carry, if it's finally passed in the unicameral, one of the things that I really want to do, and one of the biggest concerns I hear from people is, well, I think they should be some form of training. I agree. You shouldn't have a firearm unless you know how to train on it. But I don't believe I should tell you not to do that. It's a constitutional right. What I think we should do is get government back into the service industry. That's what we do. And as the sheriff, one of the things I would do would implement a no-cost gun safety course through the sheriff's department. It wouldn't cost a lot. That means I got to dedicate a deputy here or there, or me. I'm certified a range control officer with the United States Army. I've been a firearms instructor with the Army. I am more than capable of putting on that class myself, and then it doesn't cost anybody anything.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's something that I want to implement, just like we do driver's ed in the high schools. I would like to see the sheriff's department offer maybe once a month a weekend class on gun safety. Now, it's going to be difficult for us to do the range portion of that under the concealed carry, and I certainly wouldn't want to try and offer a concealed carry class. There's private industry that's doing that.
Sure, all over the state. Yeah.
So, but to offer a gun safety and a gun familiarization class to anybody in the community that wants it, I think that's a good thing for a sheriff to offer.
Yeah. One of the things I thought about with regards to that kind of curriculum, kind of like the DARE program, really educates young people about the dangers of drugs. Of course, illegal drugs being its own category, but also over the counter and prescription. But not all drugs are bad, right? Over the counter and prescription medicine has a really good purpose. It's the misuse, it's the criminal use of drugs. And so, firearms may not be for everyone. I'm not ever going to, ever assume that. I didn't become a gun owner till well later in my life. But a sort of 2A gun neutral, focus on safety class to keep people able to make the right decisions if they found one or whatever, gosh, that's just smart. We teach people about safety belts. Why can't we teach them about gun safety?
Exactly. And to expose them to different types of guns. People walk in, just like the young lady that I was helping on the range. She came out, never fired a gun before, was very scared of firearms. And you're trying to teach her on a high capacity Glock 9mm. Probably not the right gun to start with. I mean, you show people that find a gun you're comfortable with, and don't go out and buy a 44 Magnum as your first concealed carry gun. It's probably not the right gun for that job. So that's something that I just absolutely agree with. And in the grade schools, I don't know why we're not offering the Eddie Eagle program, why we're not making that mandatory even in the first grade. Eddie Eagle doesn't teach you to shoot. It doesn't teach you to touch a gun. It teaches a child to go get an adult when they see one.
Exactly. Very safety focused.
Yeah. Why aren't we offering? We used to offer it in our high schools. We used to have gun classes and shooting competitions in high school. We don't do that anymore. Heck, several high schools in Omaha have gun ranges in their basements. So it's just ridiculous that we don't offer that we don't offer a form for the students that want to learn and their parents consent for them to learn, that we offer those types of gun safeties in the school and gun classes in the schools. We could offer hunter education for the ones that want to take it so they can do it in the school. There's just
those are hard to get classes. They're difficult to get sometimes.
Right. Especially for the younger kids who've got to have the hunter safety class before they can go out and hunt with dad or their uncles or cousins or whatever. You got to have that hunter safety class if you're a minor, and it just doesn't make sense to not offer an education system just like we do with driver's ed. So
great. So let's talk about red flag laws. What do you think about red flag laws?
The concept's not bad, and I say that in that if you've got family members and you've got people that can bring to attention that somebody is having a psychotic episode or is having a bad problem, we should probably look at that person and determine if they need the gun. The problem I have is the way they're putting in. They're being implemented. They're fraught with constitutional violations.
Okay.
And in practice, they're not really, there's no due process. And that's a problem. You can't have a close corollary is the domestic violence protection order. If you go and file one of those and they serve it, it's absolutely imposed as soon as it's served. And then the person has the right to request a hearing and go have a hearing. The problem with a lot of the red flag laws is there's no follow-up. There's no mandatory hearing. There's no setup to determine what it is. And you know, so they run afoul of not only the Second Amendment, but they run afoul of search and seizure and due process issues. So if a red flag law is carefully sculpted to, going back to what I said about the Constitution, carefully sculpted to protect that minority right, that individual right, and you got to see how they're doing that before you can determine whether you would support it or not. But if something were that narrowly tailored to make sure that we're doing that, you have to make sure that if you're going to take something away from somebody based on a mental status, that mental status is either permanent or so severe that they have to lose it. And you have to have a way back to get your guns back. You have to make sure that those guns can be properly returned to the individual, not disposed. You know, under Nebraska law, once a law enforcement officer takes control of weapons, they can only release them pursuant to a court order. Period. Yeah. So if somebody burglarizes your house and takes your guns and we recover them, you got to go to court and get an order to get the police department to release them.
Yeah, I've heard that. That's not exactly what a lot of people think exists, but it does.
So, you know, when it comes to red flag laws, it got to have a strong due process right for the targeted individual and a method for them to get their firearms back. And they have to be adjudicated by the right person, you know, a mental health professional who's not biased against firearms, which, you know, if you look at the AMA, they're very much biased against firearms. Yeah. But you have to have them properly adjudicated by that and then reviewed by a judge. It's got to have that judicial legal review in there. So would I support a red flag law if it were drafted properly to protect the individual's rights? Probably.
It sounds like
any of them I've seen. No.
Right.
I just haven't seen one that has the right protections.
Yeah, the few that I've seen at least attempted were what we call emergency. Like literally there's a 72-hour hold, and unless something significant justifies further action, everything goes back to normal. And
the problem, even on those, a lot of those that I've seen don't have. If you're going to do, if somebody is in that position, we already have mental health holds.
Correct. And so that's the thing.
We already have that.
Is we're not using them very well.
Right. And that's already there. If you're that worried about the person because of a mental health issue, we already have laws on the book. It goes back to the same thing that, you know, every liberal that wants to make a new gun law, why don't you enforce the ones we have?
There are so many that would be lovely to be enforced.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the person who bought the gun that killed Carrie Orozco.
Exactly. That one in particular.
Are you freaking kidding me? I had to go on that and going a little off topic. I was at Police Memorial Week when the Attorney General couldn't be there, so she sent one of her assistants. It was the attorney who was an assistant attorney general in Georgia who ruled on that case. And then she had the gall to use Carrie Orozco's position as her death as one of the reasons why they're tough on crime. I literally booed in the audience. I was so pissed. But yeah, that's life.
That would be hard to listen to, I would imagine. So going from red flag laws, let's talk about state preemption. So the state overseeing, you know, firearm laws. And in Nebraska, we don't have state preemption, which is why Omaha and Lincoln have so many differences, if you will, than what's normal across the state. What's your thoughts on state preemption?
We need state preemption. You can't expect people to know every city ordinance when they travel into a city. And most cities, with the exception of Lincoln and Omaha, can't really pass laws that put you in jail. They can pass laws that cause you fines, which you have plenty of time to deal with.
Right.
But Omaha and Lincoln can put you in jail. And that's a deprivation of liberty on somebody. Now, ignorance of the law is no excuse, but
True.
ignorance of the minutia should be an excuse. And
Well, and I think
if you're able to carry, I mean, I grew up in central Nebraska. I come out from high school and there's shotguns in the back of every pickup. Why? Because everybody was going pheasant hunting right after they got out of school.
Right.
So, nobody freaked out over that. Nobody had a problem with that. But when you end up coming to Omaha, you wouldn't want to leave your shotgun in the back of your window in Omaha because it won't be there when you get back.
Correct.
But why should you have to worry that your shotgun's behind the seat? And why should you have to worry that your firearms behind the seat? You shouldn't have to be worried about what the laws are in each jurisdiction that you enter, unless you're caught crossing a state line. And then, the states have the right to determine what they want to determine. So
sure. And at the state level, it makes sense. There's a lot more ease of finding the information. Even just trying to find ordinances online for either city can be challenging for a lot of our members. And a lot of times we answer the same questions over and over again, because it is difficult to know how am I going to be compliant with anything that's unique.
And Omaha does a crappy job of cleaning up their ordinances. For example, there's an ordinance that says you cannot run for political office while you're employed by the city. Aaron Hansen is employed by the city. That law is on the books. City legal's position is, well, it's not constitutional, so we're not going to enforce it. Well, then take the law off the books.
Yeah.
I agree with them. I agree with them. It's not constitutional.
Right.
So, but why is it still on the book?
Hey, we know it's not constitutional, but we're not going to do anything about it. So sue us.
Well, you want another good one. You remember, you live in the metro area, right? Do you remember the gentleman that took the deer out at Zarinsky Lake, thought he was in Sarpy County and was actually on the part of it that's in Omaha?
Yeah.
The knee-jerk reaction of our city council was to pass a law that says you can't fire a bow in an Omaha City Park, period. No archery. You know the problem with that? We have 2 parks with archery ranges.
I know, which are fantastic.
They're great. And one of them is a stalking range. One up at Lake Cunningham is a stalking range. You walk through and shoot targets as you're walking.
So much fun.
But I brought that up when they passed the ordinance. I reminded city legal, deputy or assistant city attorney Bernard Endenbosch, and he says, well, we'll just expect Omaha officers to use some common sense.
God.
Really?
Sorry, that was my dog. It's not me.
The problem I have with that is what's going to happen when somebody from PETA figures that out, that we have a stalking range and you're not allowed to use them.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous the way Omaha polices their ordinances. So, I've got a lot of experience with that. That's something I did at Omaha at OPD is rewrote the entire policies and procedures manual. It was an SOP, standard operating procedures manual, over 2,200 pages long. I cut that down to 1,100 pages, didn't eliminate any needed policies, but I got rid of a ton of the fluff and made it brief and made it to the point. And it's important that you make your guiding documents, whether it's city ordinances or whether it's a policies and procedures manual. You've got to make it relevant and you got to make it current. And one of the things that we did was we established a 3-year review of every policy. So every policy gets reviewed every 3 years now. So we make sure that we're staying current and nothing's getting old and nothing's conflicting with another policy. So
well, we're going to go through the next fairly quickly. We want to make sure that we don't overextend the bandwidth on our videos. So we're going to go over your thoughts on castle doctrine and duty to retreat. And those two kind of go together. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, we have a pretty good self-defense law in Nebraska. The problem with that is it's more of a affirmative defense, and it's not more of, it is an affirmative defense. You've got to be charged and raise it. Now in Omaha, we're extremely lucky to have a county attorney that recognizes self-defense and on multiple occasions has cleared gun owners very quickly in shootings where it was clearly self-defense, and he won't charge. But if you look at the castle doctrine, bottom line is I support that. I believe a person should be able to protect their family. And if you're in your home, the presumption automatically, and the presumption under the law in Nebraska is that that person means you arm.
Yeah.
And, but having that stated plainly, I think with a Castro doctrine is better. And as a sheriff, I would support such a bill. Duty retreat, same thing. Why should you have to back off somebody who's threatening others or threatening you? And honestly, if we'd have had that law on the books, James Garner probably wouldn't have been indicted by the grand jury for the simple reason it's pretty much impossible to indict when the law affirmatively says you have the right to do that.
Mhm.
So, that's one of the reasons we need a stand your ground law is to prevent politically motivated, and I shouldn't say politically motivated. It was a grand jury, duly constituted, but I don't know what was presented to them. It's secret. That's
Correct,
not
right.
released in the current law. So we don't know how it went. Certainly the attorney that was running the grand jury, there's no question he was politically motivated and extremely biased. He's proven that in his press statements. But if he would have had a law that said this person has an affirmative right to not retreat, it would have been really hard to indict
Right.
Mr. Garner on that. So that's one of the things that I really don't like. So
Are there any specific gun laws that you can think of? I think you mentioned it, that you would like it to get repealed, like the
I'd love to
registry.
get Omaha's gun registration law repealed. So it's ridiculous. There's no reason to have it other than to make people who aren't criminals into criminals. And even though Aaron Hansen likes to bring up the gun gangbangers, they make sure their girlfriend takes it or something like that. Well, okay. Well, that just makes your job a little harder, but why should we infringe on the regular Second Amendment people or the regular citizens just because the criminals are doing it? Well, you have a way to do that. You just need to show who had it. But if that person's not committing a crime and has committed no crimes, I just can't prohibit them from having a firearm. So, we talk about that all the time with the preemption laws. As a supervisor, I've seen Omaha police officers wrongly apply the law and arrest people. I saw 2 officers that arrested a guy for carrying a concealed weapon. He had one of those belt buckle derringers. It was not loaded. He had no ammo for it in the car. It was in the belt buckle, and the belt buckle and it were in a Pelican case.
Oh, goodness. Okay.
Okay. What's the law say that if it's stored and not accessible to the ammunition, it's not illegal to transport it? And they arrested him for transporting in Omaha. It's just ridiculous. And the guy showed it to him because he was proud of it. They're cool little guns. I wouldn't want to shoot it, but they're cool. I've gone down and testified on people who are ignorant on the law. When I testified against the 1,000% ammunition tax that Senator Wayne tried to introduce through the banking.
Yeah, I remember that.
Oh my God.
That. Yeah.
Just some of the stupid, idiotic questions coming from state senators. And I can't remember which one said, well, the Second Amendment doesn't say anything about ammunition.
I remember that too.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. It says firearms. A firearm is a unit. Without the ammo, it's a club.
Well, the First Amendment doesn't talk about the internet either. So get off the internet.
Exactly. So, I support the Castle Doctrine. I support those. I want to repeal stupid laws. And here's a real big one that's stupid. Suppressors. Suppressors are a safety issue. They help people's hearing. They make it safer and more comfortable and easier for everybody to shoot. Why are they treating them like it's Elliot Ness in the 1920s, which is where they got it's Hollywood got the suppressor. It's still a silencer to Hollywood. When they shoot it, there's no sound.
Correct.
You've been around suppressed firearms. They make a lot of sound.
Oh yeah.
I listened to a Barrett fired with a suppressor on a range. Holy cow.
Wow.
It still made a little bit of noise.
I bet. Yeah.
I couldn't imagine shooting a Barrett indoors on an indoor range without a suppressor on it.
Well, I used to offer what I called the 50 cal experience. We had a 5 round magazine fed AR-50, and we shot it in the indoor range in Omaha.
Oh, wow.
Long story short, if you are shooting it, you're good. You're in this outside of the cone, if you
Oh,
will.
right.
As the RSO, I have to be right there. And so it's the only time I've ever smushed my ears in with my muffs. But the concussive effect, right, on your chest was
Right.
quite
Oh, yeah.
quite impressive. Yeah.
Well, and see, that's the thing. What do we need to get rid of? That's one. I just don't think we should be treating suppressors as just like an automatic weapon.
Mhm.
You know, there's just no reason to do that.
Yeah.
Um,
So the last two questions we had, the second to last one was, what's your position on the intent and purpose of the Second Amendment? I'll be very frank, your opening statement about how you wanted to participate in this, you did a very thorough job there. Let's just go on to the Nebraska Constitution. So we have Article 1, Section 1 of the Nebraska Constitution, which is our statement of rights, which really spells out in so many beautiful sentences what we've been discussing this evening, our rights and freedoms to keep and bear arms for all legal purposes, for self-defense, tradition, hunting, and what have you. How do you think that part of our Constitution will impact your decision-making as sheriff?
well, honestly, I've never looked that closely at it until this time, and I looked at it and I'm going, okay, so how does Omaha still have their gun laws? They seem to be a direct infringement on this. It says infringed, denied, or any subdivision thereof. Then how are we making people register guns in Omaha? How is Lincoln adding laws to that? So, I read that, and the first thing I thought is, this is the American way. It's rugged individualism with the ability to protect oneself, one's family, and others. There's no mention of only at home. There's no mention of only when the government gives you permission. It's hard to reconcile the gun registration laws in Omaha and the ones in Lincoln with that statement in the Constitution. So I'm not sure why we haven't sued some of these people over that, just to get rid of those, because they're wrong.
Yeah. Well, and I'll answer that question. It's a fair question. Your surprise does not surprise me, which is why I had the reaction I did. When I became familiar with that paragraph, I had the same exact response that you did. And if it comes down to it, yes, we will sue. But we are a very small grassroots organization. Sure. We are a 501c4 and our membership is free. So you can imagine raising enough money to have a lawsuit might be challenging.
Yes, it might. Mm-hmm. But you can also, there's attorneys out there that can research that and might be willing to do a little pro bono.
And I will tell you, that is certainly on the table, sir. So on that note, I'm going to go ahead and end the recording. Thank you so much for joining us. How does someone find out more about you and your campaign for sheriff?
Well, the big thing you can do is go to my website, www.merithewforsheriff.com. You'll find a lot about me and about my family, what I stand for, and some of the experiences that I've had. 38-year member of the United States Army. I was just in uniform tonight handing out awards for the Creighton University's ROTC program. Great group of kids. They can follow me on Facebook, Merithew for Sheriff. I'm also on Twitter at Merithew for Sheriff, or it's George for Sheriff on Twitter. They shorten the amount.
They always do.
But yeah, check out any of those. If you got a direct question for me, just email me. That's merithewforsheriff@gmail.com. Any way you want to get a hold of me, follow me on any of those. And of course, always looking for a little bit of help. Anybody that wants to help me with the yard signs or anything like that, shoot me an email, and we certainly could do that. And of course, campaigns are expensive, so we're always looking for donations. So
wonderful. Well, thank you, George, so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for your time.